Cool. Hello, folks. I'm Charlotte Hadley, and this is...
I am Nick Crane. And yeah, before we get started, actually, I just want to apologise for this horrific talk title, clearly done with an LLM, but that will become relevant in a moment, as you'll see.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about HTML widgets. I love HTML widgets. I love HTML widgets a little bit too much.
She's actually obsessed.
I've been wanting to do this talk since 2018, but I haven't had any way to do it. And then Nick invited me to give this talk with them. And so we have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with some interactive sessions. So we're going to make this as interactive as possible because HTML widgets is all about interactive stuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to cast your mind back to before you heard about our amazing talk with a horrible title in it. And if you cast your mind to before that point in time, raise your hand if you had knowingly used an HTML widget. Okay, that's a fair number. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever used a DT package. It's a large number of people. So a DT package is an HTML widget. Hands up if you use shiny : render DT. Stop, it's deprecated. Go and use the DT package, please. The package does tell you it's deprecated, but nobody's listening. That's fine. Hands up if, like Kia and Ewan, you've made use of Leaflet. Wonderful. And if they're shiny in productions, maybe you don't care about nice tables or maps. You do care about performant code. So hands up if you've used ProfViz. ProfViz is an HTML widget.
I did not know that before.
Right? It's amazing. React log is not. That's an HTML widget, so I prefer that. So hands up if you have not put your hand up so far. Tiny number of people, so it's the Python user. Right. So HTML widgets is amazing. You can use them in Shiny, which is what we're here for, but you can also use them in Quarto, and you can just use them in R. And clearly we can just use them in R because we're using ProfViz to just profile our code. So where is the spiritual home of HTML widgets? It's htmlwidgets.org. So there's some documentation there, and there's also a gallery of over 130 different HTML widgets that do all sorts of different things. So we have some goals for our talk, which we're going to definitely meet. And we want to show you how HTML widgets work, because I haven't done that, I just asked you a bunch of questions. We're going to narrate some live code building an HTML widget package with LLMs, because it's about LLMs and HTML widgets. We'll offer some advice, and hopefully we will grow the love and appreciation for HTML widgets and make more packages that use HTML widgets. Cool. So what are we going to build? Well, let's dog food ourselves, shall we? So we're going to make a timeline. Let's make a timeline of the things that we can do with HTML widgets, or what HTML widgets has gained over time. So HTML widgets was first released in 2014, and then pretty much straight away in 2015, the folks at Plotly went and said, let's throw our old package in the bin and rewrite it using HTML widgets because it's so awesome. And Plotly is one of the most commonly downloaded packages from CRAN, and that's an HTML widget. Most people who use it don't know that, which is a shame. It's Shiny in production, so async. HTML widgets got async functionality as soon as Shiny did. And how about bind cache? HTML widgets also supports bind cache. And there's a photo of Charlie earlier, because bind cache supports both promises and I did learn how to say your package name earlier. Mireille? It's not right, is it? Mireille? Close, okay. And then in 2025, HTML widgets gets a hex sticker if Carson actually merges our pull request.
Yeah.
Which you should, yeah, absolutely. You know what? I don't want just a timeline. I want a responsive timeline, right? I want it to be accessible and mobile friendly. So when the viewport of the web browser is wide, I want it to be horizontal. And when the viewport gets below a certain size, I want it to be vertical, which is responsive web design. And there is the hex sticker in theory. So what is HTML widgets? Well, HTML widgets is a tool that allows you to build an R package that wraps a JavaScript framework. So in order to build that thing, what we need is we need to choose a JavaScript framework or library or whatever you want to call them with JavaScript. So I Googled and I found a responsive timeline that I quite liked, and we liked it together. So Daisy UI is the Tailwind CSS plugin that has a really, really nice responsive timeline. So I handed over to Nick to build that.
Yeah, so at this point, I just want to shoehorn LLMs into things because that's what a lot of people are doing these days, right? But no, the idea here was that, Charlie was very enthusiastic about HTML widgets. I wanted to learn about them, but actually, I wanted to see how far I could get without necessarily diving too much into them. So the idea here was, can I make an R package that wraps Daisy UI and creates these timelines using HTML widgets without really reading too much and just diving straight in there with a prompt? So I decided to give it a go and see how it worked. So I started off in ChatGPT, and I started off with a prompt that just said, how would I create an R HTML widgets package to wrap this thing, which is a Daisy UI timeline? And I gave it a link. So again, the idea here was just to try it with this really kind of naive perspective, just to see how much the LLM could add in here. And actually, it started off looking pretty all right. So it knew about the concept of HTML widgets packages. It knew that we had to have a way of combining the JavaScript with kind of R code and CSS. And it knew that it needed to both get Daisy UI, and then there was Tailwind as well, which is another part of that stack. So that kind of started looking quite reasonable. And I kind of moved over to GitHub Copilot then to try to build the thing. And after a few back and forth of discussion, I set it to write the code. And actually, this is where everything started to go a bit wrong. So it definitely knew that we needed to incorporate Tailwind, CSS, and Daisy UI. But then it was asking me questions about whether I wanted to create a package where these things were fetched from a content distribution network when we run the code, or whether they're kind of like bundled into the package. Now, at this point, I didn't really know much about HTML widgets packages, but I've had a lot of interesting experiences submitting packages to CRAN, and I know that you can run into all sorts of problems if you're using things that are trying to access the internet as they're running, right? So I kind of figured I probably want to bundle it, but I kind of figured the LLM would figure this out for me. It didn't. So after a bit of debate, okay, let's try bundling it. And so we carried on. And it built a package that I guess could make timelines, if by timelines we mean just a sequential list of words that I'd put in there. So no, the initial version, it was a mess. But the components seemed to be there. For somebody that didn't know anything about the internals of packages, there was JavaScript, there was CSS, there was R code, there were some examples. And I decided to just keep on iterating, really, and keep having this back and forth to try to get it working. We got slightly better. There was some, I think that is maybe a little bit of the CSS applied, maybe. But again, the progress was so slow. I really should have just gone and read something and not bothered with an LLM. There was a point at which I just got sick of this whole process, and I actually went to the Daisy UI website, grabbed the CSS from there, dumped that into the package, which ended up working better than the LLM version. So again, kind of human intervention was pretty good there. Yeah, and after all this, I was just sick of this, and it was just like, Charlie, can you fix this for me, please? And she did, and now Charlie's going to tell you about what she did to sort it out.
Yeah, so just like everything, an HTML widget is just a YAML document, really. Everything is today. And so the LLM had made a YAML document, and all it had given it was a name and a version. I quite liked the version number. Well, I mean, it did put it as 1.0, and it was not a release candidate, so didn't like that. So the YAML document is what controls the HTML widget. It tells it where to source the CSS, where to source the JavaScript from. And so what I needed to do is I needed to add those lines to tell the HTML widget about its dependencies. Once I added those dependencies, I also needed to put those JavaScript files and the CSS files into the correct place inside of the package so that the HTML widget knew about them. And then what I needed to do is I needed to go into the actual JavaScript file. So there is a single JavaScript file that you have to write in an HTML widget. But in theory, you could just write one and just R code, in theory. So this JavaScript file here, what we needed to do here is we need to build up the timeline. So what I did is I went back to the web page where I found out about the responsive Daisy UI timeline, and I saw there were two classes that I wanted, timeline vertical and LG colon timeline horizontal, and I added those in as the classes. Great. What I then did is I remembered I've learned, forgotten, and relearned JavaScript multiple times in the last 7 years. I can't remember if I knew this and I forgot it or I didn't know this, but JavaScript is lovely-ish sometimes. So for each in JavaScript has an index for 3, which is really nice. So the for each function inside of JavaScript knows where the index is, which is really nice. And that was really useful for me when I was coming in and fixing the thing that the LLM had made, because what I needed to do is I needed to put HRs, horizontal lines, between the first element and every element onto the last one. And the index, which comes for free with JavaScript, was really nice because I could go, okay, not 1, or the length of the array, put in HR everywhere else. And that was really lovely. You know what? If we'd have just built the LLM, I wouldn't have had that learning opportunity. Potentially the nth time I've learned that, but that's fine. That's fine. So yeah. And then it worked. And then I promised back on July the 7th that I would make this pretty one day. And I haven't. There's not quite enough contrast on this projector, but projector or screen projector, there is a grey vertical line between these elements. It might not look like it on the screen, but there is, but it still looks gross. So I've promised to fix it at some point, and I might. Oh, shoot. Why do we like HTML widgets?
You're obsessed. I don't know. They're cool.
We like HTML widgets because HTML widgets are awesome. Because we can supply our own data. So it's not there's an HTML widget package and it has one data set in it. It's a function. You pipe your data in. Or if you don't like pipes, you just put it first argument. Fine. Whatever. So we also really like them because they integrate with Shiny. And so I've taken photos of lots of speakers during today's conference. So Gabriella had this here, where Gabriella said that she thought it might be difficult to make use of leaflets because she wanted to capture the click events. That's built into HTML widgets because HTML widgets is beautiful. HTML widgets has a Shiny integration built into it via JavaScript, Shiny on event, and you can capture clicks, hovers, double clicks, all sorts of things. It is beautiful. But we've got opinions about things. So there are 3 different ways that you can give an HTML widget function your data and get it to build the thing that you want it to build. You can either use tilde notation, tidy evaluation, or disgusting reserved column names. So I really like calling this tilde notation. I don't think anybody else does. But this is formula notation. So the tilde symbol is formula. In base R, if you use the as.formula function, you'll get a formula. I call it tilde notation. That is what is used in Plotly and Leaflet. Tidy evaluation, that makes the function, that makes the package feel a lot like a tidyverse package because you just use naked column names. No horrible tildes, which is great, because sometimes you use Windows computers and I don't know where to tilde is. I know. And then there are HTML widgets that do this disgusting thing where you need your data set to have specifically named columns. Now, there's an HTML widget I really like, which is called Viz Network. Viz Network is a beautiful package for creating interactive graph or network, so not charts, graph, network. And there you need your columns to have specific names. ID, title, ID, title, ID, title. There's a bunch of them.
Edge node, or is that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It just, oh, yeah, so edge needs from and to, and it's just disgusting, right? That's horrible. So let's vote.
Yeah, we're going to do a sort of live, let's try to add things to the package with an LLM, as live demos always go really well in conference talks, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to add either the ability to use the formula notation, the tidy evaluation, and we're not even going to think about the column names because otherwise Charlie might kill me.
Yes. So vote if you want tilde notation. Yes. Okay. Vote if you want tidy evaluation.
Okay, we've got a clear
I'm so
winner.
happy we didn't have to fix it at all. That's amazing.
Okay, so Charlie has convinced me that it's a great idea to do this live, so I'm going to
yeah.
set it running and she's going to explain the results. So I've just got VS Code open here because that's what I use first time round. I'm using GitHub Copilot, Claude Sonnet 4, and I'm going to say do the below task using the tidy notation version. So update the code in this package so I can pass in an expression like this to create a timeline. So we've got a data frame with one column date, one column event. I think we've seen this kind of timeline earlier. I'm passing in the whole code base to give it that context to look at. And in fact, what I'll do is I'm just going to get rid of the bit about formula notation just to make it a bit simpler. So this is going to take a moment. It started running now. Let's see what it's doing. So it's saying it used 26 references. I have no idea what that means, if I'm honest with you. It does love to give this quite long narrative, so it's going to, update the JavaScript to handle a new data structure, very nice. It's now choosing a file to update, so Daisy timeline, the main one in this package that's got the R code. And it runs through almost matrix-like scrolling down, which I think is quite cute. It's going to manually update the namespace file because it doesn't quite understand how a lot of our tooling works, but that's fine. And the docs file. So, Charlie, do you want to see what you think of how it's done?
Yes. Hi.
So it looks like it has added in 2 extra parameters to the Daisy timeline function, right?
Nice. So we've got a date and a title argument. And hopefully it's going to get a nice default for those arguments.
Cool.
Wonderful. And then we've got some stops, that's fine. We've got a map if, okay. Oh, hello.
What have you seen?
Hi. Today, when we run it, I actually understood what we meant. So we've done this a bunch.
I fixed the prompt before the talk.
Did you fix the prompt before the talk? This is the wonderful thing about collaborating on a talk, is you've got multiple people changing things. So I've seen previous versions of this prompt where it did a really, sorry, I almost swore. It did a really stupid thing, and it used base R for non-standard evaluation, despite being asked to use tidy evaluation. So it's using substitute, and it's using parse and deparse, and that's not tidy evaluation. What we want is we want tidy evaluation. So it is using rlang and enquo, that's nice. I do admittedly always forget whether I use enquo or quo, and then I have to test it.
Oh, I have read the cheat sheet for that so many times, and I will read it many more times in my lifetime.
Okay, really fun how it's being inconsistent on a namespace. So that's not bad. Great, okay, that's wonderful. Process date.
Oh, your favourite function, map2.
I do love map2. I love map2. Everyone should use pmap just because, but that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, that looks fine.
So shall we see if it runs then?
Yeah, so you got me a script file, right?
Yeah, there's another one open. Oh,
This one?
not that one though.
That one's a play button.
Okay, so it looks like, okay, the LLM has also created a new test file. Nice, nice.
Which file do you
bottom
want to
one.
go to? Bottom one? Cool. Okay, lovely jubbly. So if we didn't explain, we have a GitHub repository with this package in. We're looking at the main branch, which just about worked. It got to the point where I put the YAML document together correctly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use DevTools to load all. So I can load the package. Let's load the package. Lovely jubbly. I hate that name, Daisy UI widget, but it is what it is.
Submit a pull request.
Yeah, okay. There's my data frame, and then I'm going to give it
Oh, yeah, that
evaluation
second one.
now. And then there's this really fun bug with this chat over here, where it's wider, it's on top of this element, but it doesn't know it. Wonderful.
But yeah, no, it's done it.
It has done it.
Nice, okay.
That's really nice.
So the stuff before didn't work, but actually adding like the smaller feature looks pretty decent.
It does when you engineer the prompt.
Cool.
I want it to switch, but I can't make it zoom. I
Well,
can't change
between
the
people
viewport.
and the pub, we should just get on with the
Okay,
talk.
cool.
Cool. So, okay. We did try a few other things actually, a few other features. So another thing we tried separately to this. So Charlie mentioned actually enjoying like the process of actually going through the code and relearning a thing and having that fresh in our head. And I wanted to like have a play around to see actually. It's all good and well using LLMs to generate code, but what about using LLMs to kind of teach us how to actually write the code? So I did this whole experimental process looking at creating this reactivity in the widgets. When a user clicks an event in the timeline, it'll update something in the code somewhere. So for this example, a user clicks on that last event and we update something in the Shiny app to give a bit more of a description. I found a paper, actually, really interesting by T. Lin from 2023, all about using ChatGPT to help adult self-directed learners. I'd actually really recommend looking it up. It's super interesting. So in this paper, Dr. Lin breaks this down into kind of multiple steps, talks about how ChatGPT can help with them. And I gave this a go. Yeah, it was really cool. It gave me this like schedule of activities based on my preferred learning style. So I prefer to learn by running snippets of code rather than reading kind of long vignettes and documentation. So it took this into account. I mentioned that I'd worked with a DT package. So one of the activities was around reverse engineering DT. And we had almost this back and forth where I really felt like I was being tutored. I'd say, why does this work like this? It would be like, well, what do you think should go here? And by the end of this, I just felt pretty empowered as a learner. Like I'd actually kind of done a lot of this myself. There's probably not time to go through this in detail now, but if you are interested in that, I do have a write-up on my blog. I'm going to skip another bit, again, in the interest of time. But just to conclude, actually, we learned some really interesting lessons when we were putting this together. So the first thing is that when you're trying to kind of create these things with LLMs, they make really weird decisions if left unchecked. Like on the other iterations, the LLM would try to keep backwards compatibility with its own previous design decision that we were getting rid of. There was another point at which it wrote a weird number of tests. Like I am for thorough tests and packages, but this was testing things that just didn't need to be tested and would really impact the maintainability of the package. And it's really important to be explicit about expectations and iterate. But also the biggest thing for me is this idea, actually, LLMs at the moment with R code really struggle with connector tasks. So R is a glue language. It can kind of bring other things together. And because the LLM knows some R and some JavaScript, it doesn't know how to bring them together necessarily in the context of HTML widgets. And actually, this is something that I found on other projects. So I'm one of the maintainers of Apache Arrow, and I found that trying to use LLMs on that project also doesn't work amazingly. We use CPP11 to bring the C++ and the R together, and a lot of the fixes that an LLM has come up with, it kind of gets C++, it gets R, but again, not how they come together in this specific framework. So I feel like in these kind of tasks, it's all about either scoping them within one language or going really hard on the prompting and adding context there. And actually, if this is something that's interesting to you, there's this amazing blog post by Simon Couch. It's about how he uses a project-level prompt actually in Claude, and this just made my LLM-generated R code go from mediocre to actually like pretty all right on a lot of projects. Not this one, but yeah.
So at this point in time, I suggested to Nick that maybe we could entertain the idea of making an HTML widget chatbot, and you told me no, which was a really good thing. But also, I don't think it's a good idea. So there's a chatbot where you can ask it to make a Shiny app for you, but I think it robs you of the ability to learn how Shiny works. And also, our HTML widget sucks. The good HTML widgets are really good because they wrap an entire framework and they give you all of the flexibility and all of the beauty of a JavaScript framework as an R package. And the person who built it made decisions about what they wanted. Did they want something which was extremely close to the underlying JavaScript API, which is the case for my favorite HTML widget, high charter, or did they want a very R-like thing, which you get with Plotly? So the Plotly R package is an R package, not really a wrapper for the JavaScript framework. And that's beautiful, utterly beautiful. Cool. So your HTML widget sous chefs today have been Charlotte Hadley and
Nick Crane. Cool, thank you.